The hunter of ash and silence. The first sign was not the fire. It was the silence. The mountains were old, older than kingdoms, older than memory, and they had learned to endure many things: storms that split peaks, avalanches that swallowed forests whole, even dragons whose passing shook the bones of the earth itself. But never had they known silence like this. It spread ahead of him, a suffocating stillness that smothered birds mid-flight, that drove wolves from their dens, that made even the wind hesitate as if afraid to breathe. Because he was coming. Far above the jagged ridges, where the air thinned into something sharp and unforgiving, a shape cut through the sky like a tear in the world. Massive, blinding, terrible, wings stretched wider than a fortress wall, each beat sending shockwaves rolling through the clouds. His scales gleamed pale, not silver, not white, but something colder, something deeper, like bone bleached beneath an endless sun, like frost that had forgotten warmth ever existed. His name had been spoken once, long ago. Now it was only whispered. Varkir, the pale inferno. He did not roar. He did not need to. The sky itself trembled with his passing. Below, a village clung to the mountainside like a stubborn scar. Smoke rose thinly from chimneys, children played in narrow alleys, and life continued in fragile defiance of the harsh world around them. Until the shadow came. It swallowed the sun, turned day into dusk. And when the first villager looked up, he didn't scream. He simply dropped to his knees. The others followed, not because they understood, but because something ancient in their blood told them what stood above them was not meant to be defied. Varkir descended, slowly, deliberately. His wings folded with a sound like distant thunder, and when his claws touched the earth, the mountain cracked, stone splintered, and the world held its breaths. He looked down at them. Tiny, fragile, temporary, creatures that burned bright and vanished quickly. He had seen countless generations rise and fall. Their wars, their triumphs, their meaningless struggles, it was all the same. But this time, they had taken something that was not theirs. The air thickened. Pressure built. Not heat. Something worse. Where is my child? The words did not pass through air. They did not reach ears. They invaded, forced their way into every mind, crushing thought, shattering will. Men screamed. Women collapsed. Children cried without understanding why. A man stumbled forward. The village elder. Old enough to know. Wise enough to fear. We don't know, he gasped, his voice trembling, his body barely able to stand beneath the weight of the dragon's presence. We swear it, no dragon has come here, no egg, nothing. Varkir lowered his head. Slowly, his massive eye burning silver fixed on the man. Lies. The word struck like a hammer. The elder fell to the ground, clutching his chest as if his heart might burst. Varkir inhaled, and the air around him died. Color drained. Sound faded. Even the light seemed to dim, pulled inward toward something that was not fire but void. This was not the breath of flame. This was erasure. Please, someone screamed, we don't know anything, please. The dragon paused. For a single moment. Then, he exhaled. The world disappeared. There was no explosion. No blaze. No destruction in the way mortals understood it. There was simply absence. Where the center of the village had stood, homes, people, life, there was now nothing. A hollow space. As if reality itself had been carved away. The survivors stared. Too shocked to scream. Too broken to understand. Varkir lifted his head. Unmoved. If they did not have answers, then they had no purpose. His wings spread. The wind screamed. And he was gone. The mountains remained. But the silence only deepened. Days passed. Then weeks. The hunt did not stop. Wherever rumors surfaced, he followed. A glimpse of white scales in the distance. A strange glow in the night. Whispers of something unnatural, something wrong. Each story drew him further from his domain. further into the lands of men. And each time, he found nothing, or worse, lies. Cities burned, fortresses crumbled, armies marched and vanished. They tried to fight him. Of course they did. Humans always fought, even when the outcome was certain, even when hope was nothing more than a fragile illusion. Steel shattered against his scales. Arrows dissolved before reaching him. Magic. Magic was the only thing that even touched him. And even that was not enough. He remembered won battles. A kingdom that had dared to stand against him. Their mages gathered at the walls, cloaked in power, chanting in unison. The air crackled with energy as ancient runes flared to life, forming barriers meant to withstand even a dragon's fury. Varkir did not slow. The first spell struck him like lightning. Blinding, deafening, enough to kill anything that lived. He flew through it. The second came in waves, fire, ice, force, layer upon layer of magic meant to tear him apart. He broke through them all. And when he reached the walls, he did not breathe. He looked, and the magic shattered. The mages screamed as their power turned against them, collapsing inward, devouring itself, consuming its wielders in a storm of uncontrolled energy. The gates fell. The city followed. And still, there was no sign of his child. Only emptiness. Only failures. And beneath it all, a growing unease. Because the trail made no sense. An albino hatchling was not something that could hide. It was not something that could remain unnoticed. Its very existence would disrupt the world around it. Power would leak. Chaos would follow. But there was nothing. No scorched earth. No frozen valleys. No storms raging where they should not. Just absence. And something else. Faint. Barely noticeable. But there, a second scent. Humans. Varkir had ignored it at first. Dismissed it. Humans were everywhere. Their scent clung to everything they touched. But this was different. It followed the same paths. Wound through the same places. Appeared at every point where the trail should have ended. It was consistent. Impossible. And yet, it persisted. The truth came at the edge of a broken fortress. It had once been strong. Walls of stone, towers reaching toward the sky, banners that spoke of power and pride. Now, it was nothing more than ruins. Varkir circled above it. Slow, careful, something had happened here. Something recent. He landed within the shattered courtyard. The ground cracked beneath him. Dust rose in silent clouds. And there, at the base of a collapsed wall, a man still breathed. Barely. His armor was broken. His body shattered. But he lived. Varkir approached. Each step deliberate. Measured. The man saw him. And for a moment, hope died in his eyes. Please, he whispered, his voice weak, trembling. I have nothing left, please. Varkir lowered his head. You were here. The man choked. Tears filled his eyes. I was just a guard. I didn't choose this. I didn't. The pressure hit him. Invisible. Unstoppable. His body arched. Bones creaked. Where is my child? I don't know, he screamed. I swear I don't know. The pressure increased. His arm snapped. He howled. Wait, please. Varkir stilled. Just enough. The man gasped. Struggled. Clung to what little life he had left. The egg, he rasped. It was brought here weeks ago, white, glowing. We'd never seen anything like it. The dragon leaned closer. Gons. They said it was dangerous, the man continued, his voice shaking. That it shouldn't exist, that it was wrong. Of course they did. They were going to destroy it. The world seemed to still. And the man swallowed. Hard. It hatched. Varkir's heart thundered. There was chaos, the man said, Light power, something we couldn't control, people died, I don't even know how. A pause, and then it was gone. The pressure returned. Sharp, demanding. WHO took it. The man hesitated. That was his mistake. The dragon's power surged. His body lifted from the ground, suspended by nothing, held in place by sheer force of will. I don't. His voice broke into a scream. WHO. A girl, he cried, a human girl's. The world stopped. She wasn't supposed to be there, just a servant, no one important. But when everything started collapsing, she grabbed it and ran. The pressure faltered. Hey, girls. Yes, the man sobbed. She ran into the lower valleys, we thought she'd die, there's no way she could survive out there, not with something like that. Silence. Varkir studied him. His thoughts, his fear, his truth. There was no deception. Only desperation. The dragon released him. The man fell. Hard, gasping, broken, but alive. Varkir turned. A human child. Impossible. And yet, the trail had always been wrong. Too quiet. Too controlled. As if someone was guiding it. His wings spread. The air trembled. And for the first time since the hunt began, Varkir changed direction. Toward the valleys. Toward the unknowns. Toward something that did not make sense. And for the first time, the pale inferno felt something unfamiliar. Not rage. Not hunger. Not even loss. But something far more dangerous. Uncertainty. The hunt was not over. It had only just begun. The child who was not afraid. The valleys were wrong. That was the first thing Varkir understood as he descended from the high mountains into the lower lands of men. Wrong in a way he could not name. The air was warmer here, softer, carrying the scent of damp soil and growing things. Forests spread across the land like green oceans, broken only by narrow rivers that wound through hills and small clusters of human settlement. It was a peaceful. Too peaceful. Varkir circled high above, hidden within a veil of clouds that bent unwillingly around his form. From this height he could see everything, every path, every roof, every flicker of life moving below. And still, he felt it. His child. Faint, distant, but undeniably theirs. Alive. The connection pulled at him not like a chain but like a quiet call. Subtle, persistent, guiding him forward. But it was not alone. The second presence remained. Humans. Not fatting. Not scattered. Constant. That should not have been possible. An albino hatchling was not a thing that could be hidden. Even newly born, its power would bleed into the world. It would warp its surroundings, bend temperature, twist the wind, disturb the balance of nature itself. It would leave a trail of chaos behind it. But here, there was nothing. No storms. No unnatural frost. No scorched earth. Only stillness. And that unsettled him more than destruction ever could. He descended lower. The forest rose to meet him, towering trees, thick canopies, shadows stretching long across the ground. Creatures stirred beneath the leaves, unaware of what passed above them. For a moment, just a moment, Varkir let himself feel the land. Life, simple, fragile, unawares. His kind did not belong here. Dragons were not part of balance. They broke it. And yet, his child existed within this place. Unnoticed. Unharmed. That should not have been possible. Unless something was protecting it. The thought settled heavily in his mind. A human's. The girl. The one who had taken his child. The one who had saved it. Varkir did not understand the difference. But he would. He had to. The first village he approached did not burn. It should have. His instincts demanded it, demanded action, demanded dominance, demanded answers carved from fear and destruction. But something held him back. Not mercy. Never mercy. But caution. If the girl had survived this long. If his child remained hidden. Then something had changed, and he needed to understand it before he destroyed it. So he did not descend in fire. He landed beyond the hills and walked. The earth groaned beneath each step. Trees shuddered. Birds fled in panicked flocks. But he did not roar. He approached the village in silence. It was small, smaller than the others he had destroyed. Simple homes of wood and stone, fields carved into the land, a single well at its center. Nothing remarkable, nothing powerful, nothing that should have been able to hide what he sought. And yet, the moment he stepped closer, the connection surged. His child was near, very near. Varkir stilled. His massive head lowered slightly as his senses stretched outward, searching, tracing the faint thread that tied him to what he had lost. There, at the edge of the village, a small structure, not fortified, not guarded, a cottage. It made no sense. He remained at the boundaries, hidden by the trees. Watching, humans moved through their lives, carrying water, tending fields, speaking in low voices. Children laughed near the well, their joy sharp and bright against the quiet rhythm of the village. No fear, no awareness. They did not know what lay so close to them. They did not know death stood at the edge of their world, watching, waiting, deciding. Varkir's gaze shifted. The cottage. There was something there. Not power, not the chaotic surge he expected, but something softer, contained, controlled, impossible. He moved closer, each step careful, measured. He had not moved like this in centuries. Like something that could be seen, something that could be noticed, something that could be stopped. The thought was absurd, and yet, he found himself moving as though it mattered. The closer he came, the stronger the connection became. His child, so close, alive, safe. The realization struck him harder than any battle. Safe, not hidden in fear, not struggling to survive. Safe, the word did not belong to dragons. And yet, it was there. He reached the edge of the clearing. The cottage stood before him. Small, worn. A single window glowed faintly with warm light. Varkir stopped. Something in him resisted. Not fear. He did not know fear. But something unfamiliar. Hesitation. He had crossed continents, destroyed kingdoms, torn through armies without pause. And yet, before a wooden wall and a flicker of light, he stopped. The connection pulsed, calling, and finally, he looked inside. What he saw did not make sense. The room was small. A bed, a table, a chair, nothing of value, nothing of power. And yet, at the center of it all, there it was, the hatchling, his child, small, fragile, curled into itself as it slept. Its scales shimmered faintly in the dim light, pale, almost translucent, catching the glow in a way that made it seem more spirit than flesh. Its chest rose and fell slowly, peacefully. There were no wounds, no signs of struggle, no fear, only rest. Varkir's mind struggled to comprehend it. This was not how it should be. This was not what the world allowed. An albino dragon was not meant to sleep in peace. It was meant to fight, to burn, to dominate, to survive. And yet, it slept, and beside it, a human girl. She lay curled around the hatchling, one arm draped loosely over its small body as if shielding it even in sleep. Her clothes were simple, worn from use, her hair unkempt, her face smudged with dirt and exhaustion. But her expression was calm, content, unafraid, as if the creature beside her was not a force of destruction, but something precious, something worth protecting. Varkir did not understand. He watched. Time passed. The night deepened. The girl shifted in her sleep. Her arm tightened slightly around the hatchling. Instinctive. Protective. The hatchling stirred. Its eyes opened. Silver. The same as his. It blinked slowly. Looked at the girl. And then, it nuzzled closer. A soft sound escaped it. Content. Trusting. Alive. Something inside Varkir shifted. Not enough to name, but enough to matter. He leaned closer. The wood creaked beneath his breaths. The air trembled with his presence. The hatchling's head lifted. It turned, looked directly at him. Recognition sparked instantly. Not fear, never fear. A bond deeper than thought, deeper than instinct. Blood, the hatchling chirped. Bright, sharp, happy. It scrambled to its feet, wings fluttering clumsily, and ran toward the window. Varkir froze. The girl stirred. Her eyes opened slowly. Confusion flickered. Then awareness. She followed the hatchling's gaze and saw him, the dragon that had burned cities, the monster that had hunted without mercy, the creature that should have been the end of everything she knew, standing just beyond her home, watching, waiting. Their eyes met, and the world held its breath. She did not scream. She did not run. She did not even flinch. She simply looked at him, studied him, as if trying to understand, as if he were not destruction itself, but something else, something unknown. And in that moment, Varkir realized something that unsettled him more than anything before. She was not afraid, and he did not know why. The hatchling chirped again, louder, excited. It pressed against the window, reaching for him, for its father. The bond surged, strong, unbreakable, and yet, it did not go to him. It stayed, beside her, between them. And for the first time since the hunt began, Varkir understood. This was not a rescue. This was not a recovery. This was something else entirely. Something he did not understand. Something he could not destroy. Not without losing something far more important than he had ever known. The pale inferno did not move. And for the first time in centuries, the hunter waited. The fire that chose not to burn. Dawn came slowly, as if the world itself hesitated. The first light of morning slipped across the hills in thin strands of gold, brushing against rooftops, creeping along dirt paths, and finally reaching the small cottage at the edge of the village. It touched the window. It touched the girl. It touched the hatchling. And it touched the dragon who had not moved. Varkir remained where he had stood through the night. Unmoving, unyielding, but not unchanged. The wind had shifted hours ago, carrying with it the sense of the waking world, fresh earth, wood smoke, distant water. Ordinary things, meaningless things, things he had never noticed before. Because before, they had never mattered. Now, everything felt different. Inside the cottage, the girl stirred. Her breathing shifted, slowed, then deepened again as she began to wake. The hatchling was already awake. It sat near the window, small body outlined in soft white light, its silver eyes fixed on the massive shape beyond the glass. Watching, waiting, for him. When the girl's eyes finally opened, she did not startle. She did not panic. She simply followed the hatchling's gaze, and found him exactly where she had left him. Outside, waiting. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she exhaled slowly. You didn't leave. Her voice was quiet, not surprised. Certain. Varkir did not answer. He did not know how. Not in a way she would understand. The hatchling chirped. Soft, expectant. It turned its head, looking between them. Waiting for something. The girl pushed herself up slowly, wincing slightly as her body protested the movement. She was tired, more tired than she allowed herself to show. There were shadows beneath her eyes, lines of strain in her small frame. She had not slept well. She had not slept well for a long time. Varkir saw it, not as a human would, not with sympathy, but with awareness. She was not strong, not by any measure that mattered. And yet, she had carried his child, protected it, fed it, hidden it, survived. That did not align with anything he knew. The girl stepped closer to the window. The hatchling followed immediately, pressing against her leg before climbing onto the low wooden ledge. It chirped again. Varkir lowered his head. Slowly, carefully, a movement that would have crushed stone, shattered walls, and sent armies fleeing in terror. Reduced to something deliberate. Something restrained. The space between them closed. Only the thin barrier of wood and glass remained. The girl hesitated. Just for a moment. Not from fear, but from understanding. She knew what stood before her. Not just a dragon, but this dragon. The one whose shadow had devoured the sky. The one whose passing left nothing behind. The one whose name was spoken only in whispers, if at all. And yet, she reached forward and opened the window. The air shifted instantly. Power flooded into the small space. Heavy, ancient, overwhelming. The hatchling chirped brightly. Unaffected, it climbed onto the edge, small claws scraping lightly against the wood, and stretched toward him. Varkir did not pull back. He did not move. He allowed it. The hatchling reached him, pressed its small body against the massive curve of his snout, and chirped again. Happy, complete. The bond flared, not as a command, not as a claim, but as recognition. You found me. The meaning passed between them without words. Varkir closed his eyes. For the briefest moment, his child was alive, unbroken, untouched by the world that would have destroyed it. And yet, not untouched. He opened his eyes again. The girl stood just behind the hatchling, watching, not possessive, not defiant, but present, important. That was the truth he could no longer ignore. The hatchling did not belong solely to him. Not anymore. When that changed everything. Are you going to take him? The girl's voice broke the silence. Simple, direct, no fear, no angers, just a question. Varkir looked at her. Really looked. At the dirt on her hands. The worn fabric of her clothes. The quiet exhaustion in her eyes. At the way she stood. Not as someone powerful, but as someone who refused to move. Who would not step aside. Not even for him. The dragon's voice came then. Slow, heavy, not spoken aloud, but pressed into her mind. His minds. The air trembled. The ground shifted beneath his weight. The truth of it was undeniable. The girl nodded. I know. No arguments. No denials. Just acceptance. But he's not just yours anymore. Silence. The hatchling shifted slightly, sensing the change, its small body pressing closer to her leg. Varkir's gaze sharpened. Danger flickered. Not anger, but something close. You claim what is not yours. The girl shook her head. I didn't claim him. She rested her hand gently on the hatchling's back. He chose to stay. The words were soft, but they carried weight. Truth. Varkir felt it. Not in her voice, but in the bond. The hatchling did not resist her touch. It leaned into it. Trusted it. Wanted it. That was not something that could be forced. That was something earned. And that realization struck deeper than any blade. You can take him, the girl said quietly. The hatchling looked up, confused. But he won't understand. Her voice trembled slightly now. Not with fear, but with something far more fragile. He won't know why I'm gone. Varkir's chest tightened. A strange sensation. Unwelcome. Unfamiliar. And he'll think she hesitated, swallowing hard. He'll think I left him. The hatchling let out a small sound. Uncertain. The bond wavered. Confusion rippled through it. Varkir felt it. Felt the shift. The instability. And suddenly, this was no longer simple. This was no longer about possession. Or strength. Or dominance. This was something else. Something fragile. Something that could break. You would follow. The words came slowly. Measured. Testing. The girl blinked. What? If HE lives, you follow. A statement. A solution. Simple. Obvious. The girl stared at him. And then, she laughed. Soft. Disbelieving. You think it's that easy. Varkir did not respond. Because to him, it was. Look at me, she said, gesturing to herself. I can barely take care of him here. I don't have anything, no home, no family. She looked down briefly. Then back up. If I follow you, I'll die. The words were calm. Certain. Accepted. When that stopped him. Because she did not say it with fear. She said it like fact. Like something she had already come to terms with. And yet, she had not left. She had not abandoned his child. Even knowing the cost. The hatchling nudged her hand. Soft, trusting. She smiled. Tired, but real. I told you I'd keep you safe, she whispered. Varkir watched, and something shifted. Deep within him. Something ancient. Something that had not changed in centuries. Until now, for the first time, he questioned, not the world, not others, but himself. What did it mean? To protect. Dragons did not protect. They claimed. They ruled. They destroyed. But this was different. This was not control. This was not ownership. This was care. And he did not understand it. But he recognized its power. Because it had done what armies could not. What kingdoms could not. What even he could not. It had kept his child alive. Safe, whole. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of the village. Of people. Of life. Fragile. Breakable. Temporary. And suddenly, Varkir saw it. The truth. This place was not safe. Not for his child. Not for hers. Because sooner or later, someone would find them. Someone would come. And when they did, they would not understand. They would not hesitate. They would destroy what they feared. Just as they always had. Just as he had. The realization settled heavily. And with it, a decision. Varkir lowered himself. Fully. His massive body sinking into the earth with a force that sent tremors through the ground. Not as a threat. Not as dominance. But as something else. Something deliberate. The girl stiffened slightly. Not in fear, but in uncertainty. What are you doing? The dragon's voice came again. But this time, it was different. Still heavy. Still powerful. But softer. You protected my child. A pause. The weight of the words settling. Now I will protect you. The girl froze. The hatchling chirped. Bright. Excited. As if it understood before she did. What? She whispered. Come. The word was simple. But it carried something vast. A promise. A change. a future that had not existed before this moment. The girl looked at him, really looked, at the power, at the danger, at the unknowns, and then she looked down at the hatchling, at the small, fragile life she had chosen to protect, at the bond that had grown between them, at the future that awaited him, with or without hers. Her hand tightened slightly, then relaxed. Okay. The word was barely a whisper, but it changed everything. The hatchling chirped loudly. Delighted, it climbed onto the window, then onto Varkir's snout. Clumsy, uncertain, but fearless. The girl hesitated, just for a moment. Then she stepped forward, out of the cottage, into the unknowns. She climbed, carefully, slowly, onto the back of something that could end worlds, and trusted it not to. Varkir felt her weight. Light, fragile, breakable, and for the first time, that mattered. His wings spread. The sky seemed to recoil. The air trembled. The world held its breath. And then, he rose, not in fires, not in destruction, but in something new. Something the world had never seen. A dragon who chose not to burn. A hunter who chose not to destroy. A force of ruin that had learned to protect. Below, the village watched, in silence, as the pale inferno carried something no one would ever believe. Not a victim, not a prize, but a promise. And high above the world, a new story began. Not of fear, not of destruction, but of something far more powerful. A bond, forged not by blood, but by choice, and for the first time in countless ages. The fire did not consume. It guarded.